Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay, and today we are joined by Hannah Spanke. And as a deep thinker who is not afraid to speak her mind and shares openly about her taboo past to empower others to live lives authentic to them. Somatic healer, relationship expert, Tantra teacher, and you've helped thousands of people. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, Hannah?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for this episode. We had to reschedule before for whatever reason. And I had done my research, I like to understand our guests, and I'm part of the process when we bring people in. And I absolutely loved your background and the way that you've embraced life. And I came across a quote from, I think it was from one of your Instagram posts, and it was your own. I'm quoting you. And I believe this is something you might use frequently, but I want to start this off on a great foot. So I would like for you to maybe explain what this means. Okay. You said, I was finally dealing with the roots, not just trimming the weeds.
This is such a perfect place to start. Seriously. Like this
I've
is
been
going
doing
to provide
this for like 5 or
so
10
much
minutes.
This is so perfect. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water and that, yeah.
I got my coffee right here, so
cheers.
I'm with you. Almond milk, so at least I'm halfway.
I've got coconut milk in mine, but...
Ugh, dude.
I know. You can't do it?
Coconut is like drinking copper tone. Like, I don't eat coconut cake. I don't eat coconut anything because all I can smell is suntan lotion. And that's a hard no for me.
So funny. Wow. So you might be like the only person alive that was like unfazed by the coconut oil saves the world trend, huh?
Oh, no. That was not coming around. No, my wife used it and she pretended like it didn't taste like it. And I'm like, no, this is like fried coconut chicken. Like it's not just chicken. You have introduced a new item into this that's changed the flavor. Please, you have to acknowledge this. I would argue, I'm like, you're not giving me validation in this simply because you don't want to admit that you slathered Hawaiian Tropic on my chicken. I can taste it. So
gaslighting.
Now that we've gone off on a tangent, but it is gaslighting, right? I'm like, it's my taste buds. I know you did it. Like it's not. The chicken
so
doesn't
funny.
lie. So anyway.
Oh man. Okay. So getting to the roots, not trimming the weeds. Yeah. So first of all, that's cool to be quoted like that. And I would say I say that a lot in different forms because it's a concept that is really foundational to the work that I do with people. So I'll give you the example that I give people. When I'm first really getting to know somebody's like backstory, seeing if we're going to work together or not, this is a really good place to like help someone understand what I do. So if you had a garden in your front yard full of weeds, okay, and you wanted to plant flowers, springtime's coming, you want to plant some flowers, and you walked outside, would you just dump a bunch of flower seeds on top of the weeds?
No,
right. You would know that you'd have to pull them out. And pulling them out would mean actually sticking your fingers in the dirt and pulling them out, not going out with a pair of scissors and making it, flush to the dirt to where it looks like there's no weeds there.
Surface pretty.
Then you dump the seeds and then you have a bunch of flowers and weeds that come back. And maybe some of the flowers don't make it because it's crowded and blah, blah, blah. So the way I work with the human body, like somatic body and trauma is if you think about your own body as a flower bed, every single time you experience something in your upbringing or even your adult life that was unhelpful to you, something that damages your, self-image, self-esteem, respect for yourself, how much you can trust other people, all of those impacts, big or small, every single thing that did not help you to experience or learn, think about that like a weed in your own garden, like a weed in your own body. And then we go to a Tony Robbins seminar, or we buy 8,000 mindset books, or, we decide we're going to go to therapy and we see someone online once a month or something like that, and it's like, that is the equivalent. Right. That is the exact equivalent to dumping a bunch of flower seeds on top of the weeds. And this is what, in the long run, really perpetuates suffering, because when you're like, quote unquote, I'm using my fingers here, doing the work by just buying shit and just consuming a lot of stuff, it seems in your own mind, consciously at least, like you're doing something, like you should have a positive result. But all of that mindset work, those flower seeds, can only sink in and grow as far as they have space to grow. And if your body's just full of fucking weeds, there's no growth.
They may never even hit the ground.
Exactly. So then that knowing doing gap gets bigger. Yeah.
That's an amazing metaphor. And I'm a metaphor man. I love that. The show always talks about different analogies, metaphors, anecdotes, ways to describe things that take it outside of language, because language is a pretty big divider. And being able to articulate something like that really helps people see. I like to envision, when I saw that, if you were looking at an ant farm, right, and you saw that slice of where that weed was and where that dirt was and the roots underneath it, and then when you came in and dropped that on there, I would know from that sliced view that you already made a mistake, right? Because I can recognize that there's something underneath there that's going to prevent this from taking what? Root. It's not going to grab a hold of anything. It's just going to sit there on top, right? So again, I think that's an amazing metaphor and analogy and a way to approach that, because we are nothing but our child selves, which is a stack or a layer of experiences over time that present as the character or human that you are in any moment in any given time, right? That's why all people are different. That's why all people wear prescription lenses, right? Because their experiences no two match. They never will, right? And you have some amazing experiences. And I say amazing because they become tools in your toolbox, right? For you to affect change later in life. You don't realize they're tools in the moment. You don't realize that your journey has waypoints in retrospect. You just know that you're in the throes of pain or some kind of lifestyle that has caused you some sort of acceptance, probably, or whatever it might be, the root of those things. And I would love to hear your story and have you share that with our listeners, because I think that there's congruent steps and parallel steps that everybody has, despite how their lens was comprised. Your lens and my lens may be comprised different, but the experience on the other side can have similarities.
Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, I'm happy to share. And I want to just make a point of what you just said. Like what you just said in itself is something that could help somebody. Just realizing once we have the awareness, it's like, you can't unsee it. And that's something we have to fully take responsibility for in the healing process. Number one, it's like when you, hold on, did I just lose my train of thought? 1 second.
They're used to me, so don't feel pressure. It's called the Tragedy Academy for a reason.
Right. When you can look back and you can see things, hindsight 2020, when you look back and you can see the purpose of the pain from the past, but not until way later, having that experience a time or two or three or 54, where we can look back and say, oh, wow, that pain actually meant something. Then it's kind of a pattern, then it's pattern recognition. Then when you're in that pain the next time around, you can remember that you still have that piece of awareness and wisdom at that point to hold on to. And it can make getting through that pain that much easier, because you can trust a little more that it has a point at the end of it. So yeah, I like what you just said, because that in itself is a big mindset shift that I think is necessary in the healing process. Because if you really believe that you're just being taken out every single time you're experiencing pain, then that's really hard to grow from, because there's no stair steps up. It's just like this cycle where you get pulled under every time in the same way, when that's not really the truth or the best way to look at it.
That cycle can become extremely comfortable. Almost like the victim chair has, it reclines, it's got cup holders, it's got Bluetooth speakers. It even has DoorDash on button. Man, you don't have to do shit with your life once you've become a victim. Like if you don't want to. You can be
Yeah.
the I should have been of everything.
Yep. And I have a lot of empathy for the victim archetype because we all play at different points, and it is the most committed fucking person. They are so incredibly committed. They're committed
That's the
to
realest thing that has ever been said by someone that came on here, because you are so effing right. It is a effing commitment to be a victim. Like, that's hardcore. And people don't realize it, dude. Like, last guy hanging on the rungs at the playground, like, for minutes, doing anything you can not to hit the ground when the ground is about a half an inch below you.
Yeah. It is effortful. Yeah.
Oh, God, dude. Thank you for saying that.
Yes. And that, like your reaction to it, my reaction to it, it's such a fucking ridiculous thing to say because it's so true. And seeing someone have that realization for themselves of like, wow, I've been spending a lot of effort, a lot of energy on keeping things just as hard as they are, instead of allowing any solution to actually land. Like that is a day and night thing. Like over the next day, you're not going to see your own life the same way. When you can realize how much energy you're putting towards your commitment to not finding a solution.
Introspection is earned.
Yes.
It's there, but it's earned. It's easily accessible, yet still earned. Right? It's a door that you can go through, but to get to it, you have to earn it. But know that once you're there, it's always accessible after that.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that. I've experienced that. You know, healing does get easier. Like people have stupid sayings, more money, more problems. Like problems never go away. Sure, that's true. But you get really good with money eventually. You get really good with healing eventually. And then the problems are just kind of part of what you expect from life. And it's not something that ever feels like it's, you know, you against the world anymore. So, yeah. So with my past, since you did a little bit of research, is there anything particular starting point that you would like to have me go with?
So I want to be very clear. Our role here is not to trigger anyone or to create dramatic effect of any sort. It's real stories about what you went through from your perspective. Because like I was saying earlier with lenses, right? Just like when we sit at the dinner table in this time-honored tradition of nonsense where I give you my glasses and you see how effed up my eyes are, and we go back and forth, you're blind. Well, guess what? That's how perspective works as well. I don't know what you've been through because I cannot see through your lenses the same way. So this is your opportunity, so to speak, to explain things and how your lenses are comprised and what brought you into the healing process and how you're giving back now.
Okay, perfect. So I love the little segue before with the whole victim thing, because more and more so as years go on, my work with people and with myself is very, very focused around finding the most nuanced, secret little hiding places in your life, in your mindset, in your emotionality, for those disempowered dynamics to be the bully, the martyr, the victim, how we dance around that little triangle, how we play them all, and how it takes our power away again and again and again, no matter how justified the situation was to put us into that role. That is kind of the bottom line of what I really help people see, and what I've had to see in a billion different ways to be able to reclaim that sovereign power in every moment, regardless of the dynamic, regardless of, oh, my dad said this stupid thing again, like regardless of the situation. For your power and empowerment to be non-circumstantial is the goal. And so
I like that. Non-circumstantial. That's extremely impactful. Hear that. Non-circumstantial means that it doesn't impact you from the outside in. You declare your reality from the inside out.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make sure that people heard that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because that's one of those things where it's so simple to say it, just out the mouth, and then it's overlooked, you know? So yeah, I appreciate that. because even though it can feel different, the truth is you are just as empowered on your wedding day as you are on your divorce day. You know, like even though, or any other contrast you can think of in your life like that, where there's a high and a low, you perceive it differently, you feel it differently, but it's this, you are the same you. You know, you have the same power that you started with and you end with, and like all of that's within your control. So for me, to make it very 30,000 foot overview, with my childhood. So my parents were together when I was born. They separated when I was 5. So child divorce situation. My mom left. She had addiction issues for the majority of my life. And then I was mostly raised by a single dad from that point on with the younger sister. He was very emotionally unavailable. He was physically abusive at times, and did what he knew how to do, you know? And so that's what happened.
He used his lenses.
He used his lenses, his tools.
Gave him, that's what you get. You get what you get, right?
Yes.
And people don't understand that. Like, well, how's he in that situation? Because he's only got a hammer and a ratchet and nothing else to use. Like, there's nothing else in the box. It's not his fault. There was just no points in time where somebody said, here you go, here's a screwdriver. All right, here's this, here's that. Or to give them the wherewithal to recognize it was a tool.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that's so important for people who came from like quote unquote good childhoods to hear, because like, and I say this like with care, because I'm not just some, you know, vigilante, like everyone has fucking trauma and you all need to think so. Like, it's not about that. But the point is that we are all human beings who were raised by human beings, and the nature of our human life and experience and nature is flawed. It is divinity in a human form that's full of limitation. So naturally, there was some limitation that your mom and your dad or your caregivers had, that you now have those holes within your blueprint to learn and fill as an adult. And that's just the thing that creates the opportunity for us to grow. If we had perfect divine parents, exactly.
If you know what Tetris is, I like that.
Yes, exactly. If we had perfect divine parents who were mother, father, God, like, you know, and had no faults, no shortcomings, no limitations, nothing they could have done better, what would we wouldn't be human. We would not have a human experience. How would we literally think about that? What would you be as an adult? I don't know. you would essentially.
You're not wrong.
You would have nothing to learn.
You're 100% right.
You know, so it's odd. So, anyways,
it's an experiment that has been in the back of my head for the last like 5 or 6 years. What do humans look like with all of the societal inputs that are created now, removed and reconvened, and seeing what it comes out on the other side? This is something I've always thought about. I'm like, what happens? Do we lose so much disgustingness? Do we come out the other side with our original intent? You know, is it an opportunity for a reset? Maybe it's leaving people here is how we save the planet, and the rest of us go away. Let them reset. I don't know. I'm sorry. I think that way. When you said the human condition, you're not wrong. It is a condition. I like to think about it kind of like its own form of a clouded mental illness that we walk around in, a fog, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We don't even realize we're in it. It's very apparent. You go to a doctor appointment, right? We haven't had cell phones so much in our hands for too long that we can't remember what it's like to sit in a room with a magazine and 5 other people, right? Eventually what happens, a conversation starts up or somebody comments about something in the room, right? That's mindfulness, right? Calling out things in the room, explaining the situation, coming up and connecting with somebody in some way, shape, or form. Now, we don't live in the moment at all. Phone or no phone. Phone might have been the gateway, but the end result is none of us are here in the moment at all.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what am I thinking about right now? And is it in this present moment? No, that's the human condition. Other creatures don't have this issue. They move on what? Instincts. We see migratory patterns that prove this over and over again. They don't have the intellect of us, yet they suddenly show up on the doorstep of the other side of the world after a big migration, right? We're the ones that put crap in the soup. We throw it all in there and then we don't realize and we complain about the flavor, right? When it was great when we started, our soup was already perfect. Or go out and get some seasonings from other cultures until your soup is palatable to you and you understand what other people are like, right? So
Yeah.
that's my rant. Please continue.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, and the essence of that feels to me like there's just so much suffering that's caused by us not taking responsibility for how we create it, you know? Ultimately, like our contribution to that. It's not happening out of nowhere. Okay, so challenging childhood, and then I stepped into the sex industry at 16, knowingly / unknowingly, knowingly for what my 16-year-old brain knew and could wrap my head around. And then a little bit of on and off in that kind of realm. And then I just dove back into that totally at 19. And I was in that world from 16, starting at 16 for about 7-8 years. So that means everything under that umbrella that you could think of, sex work, like whatever comes to mind, I've probably done it. So that chapter is what I needed to wake up from in order to start my healing process consciously. And that's what I did. And so kind of overview and hindsight being 2020, like we said, all the basis, the essence extracted from all of it, of what made that happen in my life, what made that possible in my life for me to choose to put myself in such a disempowering dynamic and situation for almost a decade, was I was taught through my childhood to be disempowered in order to survive by staying connected to my dad, to my mom at different times. And they were playing some role. They were playing the victim. They were playing the bully. They were playing something. And for me as a kid who's hardwired to survive by being dependent on this person biologically, in order to survive that, of a parent being disempowered, in order to survive that, any version of it, you learn how to mingle with that dynamic by becoming its disempowered counterpart. And that is the internal state that I stepped into my teenage years with. This very well practiced state of kind of playing the martyr, being the one that can do it all, but also with kind of a little mental twist there that allowed me to get through it, allowed me to endure it.
Justifications. There's internal justifications for damn near anything and everything we do.
Yes. And so mine was, I'm choosing it. So it's kind of diluted when I look back in hindsight. Right. It's diluted though when I look back, because
100%.
when I was in that space, like back then, 16, 17, 19 years old, when I was saying, I choose this, so I'm empowered, woohoo, like this, the farthest leftist, feministist movements around that kind of stuff, delusional. They are empowering women to sell themselves. And if that is their choice, then somehow it becomes a positive experience. And that's absolutely not true. So that's what I was selling myself, and I was buying it for almost a decade. And then later, now when I say I chose that, I have a completely different relationship with what that means. There's no ego padding built around it. It's just the observation. It's just the fact that, yes, I chose that. I can look into why. I can look into why I did it for so long, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, I used the knowledge or the awareness that I was choosing it as the reason to continue staying in a disempowered state. And that, I think, is really important to make clear, because so many people who are aware of some of their bullshit, which is most of us, we can see some of our bullshit, even if we don't know everything that's wrong or what contributed, we can see some of how we, do things sabotage and we could do better. When you can see it and then you say, oh yeah, but at least I can see it and I choose it. You're like putting your own trap on your own foot and just taking a step right into it every single time you have a piece of new awareness. And that awareness cannot actually serve you from that place, by using it against yourself. So that's what I learned how to do. My dad played the bully towards me. I learned how to bully myself internally by saying, this is my choice. So this is what comes with it. And, playing the martyr on the other side to cope, I get to be the one in charge and everyone wants it. So
if you're not paying attention at this point, you probably should rewind for about a minute to 2 minutes to understand and reiterate what it is to understand choices and the role we play in them and our victimhood, as well as how it can be used in choices to become an empowered person that's still engaging in things that are detrimental to self, right?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that could hear this, and it's in a manner where you could probably, keeping it real isn't necessarily what it means.
Uh-huh.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it real is the equivalent of a magician throwing up a cape and disappearing, right? That's all it is. It's not real. It's a way to protect a child, to smoke and mirror a situation, or to maybe psych yourself up. I don't know. People like to do that because we're so hurt and scared that we need to get a megaphone behind ourselves, of ourselves, cheering on ourselves into something that is really, it's almost like cheering somebody into a pile of dog shit, right? Like, go, 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 but I don't want to step in it. But go, go. Everybody else is going to love it. Go. Okay, I can do it, right? But this is my choice. I'm going to be the one to step in it, right? I'm going to take the power from everybody and I'm going to be the best at it. You dumbass. Like, all you're doing is...
You've ever had bragging rights around how much you can drink? That's a perfect example.
Oh, shit, man. And you know how many times I purported that fucking scenario? Like, hey, I'm that guy. I can drink everybody under the table. That doesn't get me. But I was in the Army. And I also came from a hillbilly backwoods area of Florida where everything is dependent upon the ego in some way, shape, or form. Right. Yeah. So I lived those roles. I get it. In some way, shape, or form, we live these roles and we get an opportunity to go back and look at them through new lenses. Right. And what I'm hearing is that you're using the opportunity you have now to look back at that. And I want to highlight something or ask, because there's going to be internal judgment. Right? Internal judgment is a hard row to hoe, right? You can't get through it without understanding its role, right? And I'm sure that throughout this process, because based on everything that we've discussed, this is a journey to healing. What role does forgiveness of self play in this entire endeavor, coming out of what creates that stupid word shame, the most nonsensical thing to ever exist, has no root in the now. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's a way for somebody to stay at the level they're at and can keep you where you're at, only because they're just as scared of losing their own footing. They've got to collect as many as they can from you. But otherwise, forgiveness is something that is between you and yourself, right? So let me ask you, how did that play a role in getting you through that?
Well, I would say it played the MVP role in getting me through that because
nice. I love it.
And
forgiveness
love
versus
shame.
Yes. Number 103, it's the next fight.
So I'm so glad you're mentioning shame, because I actually, in a meditation probably 3 or 4 days ago, so very recently, I got this very clear kind of download understanding of shame, a new way to sort of explain it. That makes it make sense. Helpful, I think. So if you think about every emotion, like any emotion you can think of, sadness, anger, grief, whatever, picture it being like a flower, like the bud part of a flower, the actual flower part. Eventually, that flower opens all the way up. Eventually, it starts to go through the decay process. All the leaves fall away or petals fall away, and it's complete. That flower has completed its life. Shame is like taking a Ziploc bag and putting it around the flower. It's something that inhibits the natural process of your emotions to be able to fully unfold and then die off. The temporary process that they are.
Flowers.
Right. Shame just puts it in these little vacuum sealed packs that cannot be touched. And then it has us convinced that, oh, I need to fix my depression. I need to fix my anger issues. I need to fix my
Mm,
cheating on my spouse. I can't stop. None of those things are actually fixable until we look at why the pressure is there in the first place, that it has to be fixed. And that's because the shame on top of it. And so the shame
mm.
has to be completely unsealed, opened, thrown away before the emotion can even be gotten to. But yeah, that came through the
I
other
think
day,
that's a
and
beautiful
that's
analogy. It makes perfect sense. It
mhm,
doesn't have a chance to end its life cycle,
right.
right? All things come
Yes.
to an end, but the beauty in it is that it's replanting itself because the seeds die as well that create a better flower that's matured through time, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Anybody could tell you that crops get better with time, right? They don't
Mhm.
just, as long as you're tilling the soil correctly and you're doing it right, you're going to get better flowers. You're going to have better understandings for your soil. You have better
Mhm.
understandings for the tools and the fertilizer and what makes it grow. Let that
Mhm.
flower die, dude. Let it go away and grow something cooler or grow a whole fucking garden. Right. I
Yes.
love that you live in the dirt, man. You love tilling the plants in the soil.
Yes.
These analogies are great.
I'm like neck deep in the dirt all the time, like at the beach, just 24/7. Yeah, shame is like the McDonald's fucking preservatives of emotion. It just comes in and like stops everything natural from happening. It's
It's like,
not good. So yeah, shame
yeah.
has to be dealt with on its own. So the forgiveness piece. This is so huge. I love this question so much because I've been on that journey for years now, for quite a few years. But in the last 6 months, 7 months, I've actually had kind of a new layer of breakthrough, or a deeper layer of integrating that self
Mm,
forgiveness process within myself, like a new level of relating to it, understanding it, where now I'm able to help clients in a different way, better way with their own self forgiveness journeys. The bottom line that cannot ever be escaped, and the sooner you can get to it, the better, is that in this journey, you're going to have lots of other characters involved, like your parents, like your sister who tortured you as a
mhm,
kid, like, all these different players that at first glance had an impact on you. Like it was at their hand, they did the thing.
mm,
And so people who come to me oftentimes are just starting their inner child healing process, just really learning about what that means, how mom and dad have shaped them, whether it was obvious or not, like where could they have been better supported, digging into that. It becomes very quick for people to start talking about needing to forgive their mom, needing to forgive their dad. And I now understand that as the wrong way to look at it, that it actually inhibits, it slows down, it puts a wall in the
mm,
process of you fully forgiving yourself. Because if you think about it, and this is a little bit radical to say, I guess, but if you think about it, no matter how bad your parents treated you, and you could think of the most extremes, no matter how
mhm,
badly you were treated as a child, if you are alive, there is not a single thing that your parents did to you in your lifetime that could ever actually like be weighed heavier than the life that they gave you in the first place. If you have the opportunity to live your life today, that is the gift that your parents gave you. Period. Bottom line, you literally would not exist without their existence. If they shaped you horribly from that point on, sure, there's some things to deal with there. But to forgive them, it interrupts the pattern of the family system. They're the parent, you're the child. And then you grow up, you become the parent to the next child, and on and on and on. When you're in this position, you're the kid, you're like the lower hand, they're the upper hand. You forgive them the same way that a parent would forgive a child when they messed up. It flips the order of operations. Now you are relating to them as if you're the parent and they're the child who can be forgiven for something. And
mm.
that puts you in a bit of a bind from being able to continue to heal from childhood into your adult self, because you're kind of gridlocked into a dynamic with your parents on a deep unconscious level where you see yourself as having like power over them in a certain way. So if you think about it like this, if your mom did something really bad to you, maybe she, like in my case, maybe she left, something like
Mhm.
that, that was dramatic. It left a big impact, abandonment, wounding, all the stuff. As an adult, and I'm not exempt from this, I've been quote unquote forgiving my mom for a long time. Okay, I'm not
Oh,
doing that
dude,
anymore.
I've
Not doing
I've
that
danced
anymore.
around this word in so many different formats and different ways. You know, the cleansing of the soul and the understandings of those around us, and trying to see the deep
Uh-huh.
roots of what it is that I can gain by forgiving. If
Okay.
you're standing to gain by forgiving, you're already fucked.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So if, let's say, mom fucked up, she did something that impacted you negatively. As an adult, you're now trying to process that. You're now trying to deal with that. If you, as the child, are unable to fully, in an adult way, hold her accountable for her actions as an adult, relate to her as an adult, and say, you don't have to hold on to these feelings. And this is just an example, but to be able to allow yourself to go there and say, you know what, fuck you, like that was not okay. That impacted me in this way. That was fucked up, and you could have done a better job. It doesn't need to be anger directed at them, but to give yourself that permission to have that sacred, righteous reaction to how you were treated, just like as if somebody, an adult stranger, walks by and punches you in the face while you're sitting in the drive-through. Like, you would not hesitate to react to that. There would be no,
Mm.
oh, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they've been through this, maybe they've been through that. But in the healing world, where it gets very, politically correct accidentally sometimes, people want to do it right. They want to do it perfectly. And so they put a lot of effort into being the bigger person when it comes to parent stuff. And they see it that way, at least. And they want to understand why mom couldn't show up this way, understand why dad couldn't show up this way. And that has value in the process. It does, because then it humanizes them. It makes them less of like the villain, which is important.
Fair enough.
But if you go to that spot too quickly, then you are relating to your parent as if you're still the child who cannot like handle the guilt of seeing the parent be upset, of seeing the parent have pain. And so you're still holding it all for them instead of letting that child free by saying, yeah, that was fucked up. And I still love you, and you're my mom, and you are an adult who made some mistakes. And being able to really own it that way, then you keep her in the role of mother, trusting that she can handle that guilt, that you can handle the guilt. Adults have guilt. Children don't have guilt, can't handle guilt. So they always want to find the way to make it better. Right. So acceptance, understanding, yes. But forgiveness, you can only seek that for yourself.
I absolutely love that. And I like that you addressed it from the lenses of the older stage in life, and still addressing the issue. And I think at the root of it, something that I can see as a byproduct of this, or that, we could take notice of, is that emotions are meant to be felt. And when they're suppressed in the moment of childhood, they become something that lives and grows inside of you, that weed, if you will, right? Begins to grow inside of you from that moment. But having the opportunity to go back to that moment and address it and meet it face to face gives you the opportunity to what? Reach down, grab that weed at the base, and pull it out by the roots in one shot. And you felt the emotion. You actually went through it. You didn't turn around and look a different direction or try to find a flower, right?
Yes.
Every time we're faced with a weed, we think that we've got to like cleanse our palate with a flower, right? And that's not how it works, right? You've got to embrace your weeds. Your weeds make you who you are. You're going to remove them because time doesn't exist. And to hold on to weeds is ignorant, because then it's just causing you a problem in the now when it didn't need to be here. In fact, I would argue that it would turn to dust the moment that you realized what it was. You were the one that gave it life in the now. You created it to such a degree that silk became brick, and it was a wall that you believed you could not get through until you smashed through it, ran around it, got some friends, called somebody, whatever it was. when in reality, you could have walked right through it like some 70s beads on a door, right? No problem at all. It wouldn't have been an issue because it's not. It's your choice to make it an issue, to create something in the now with it, right? I like to think about, I use a snow globe a lot as one of my analogies, right? And I imagine myself sitting inside of that snow globe. That is my world. It belongs to me and me alone. Nobody else has any impact inside of there. It is mine, right? And outside of this globe, as I sit inside, are all the thoughts, emotions, and possibilities that exist. And they move and they never stop because they exist for everyone. They're shared, right? They're all out there, from the most heinous to the cutest, right? Doesn't matter. They all exist in equal amounts, all everywhere. However, they are not in your snow globe. You have to reach outside of the glass. It's a one-way situation, and you can pull whatever it is into your globe. And I like to assign them colors, right? So if I have somebody caused me an issue at work, right? And I'm going to reach out real quick and I'm going to grab that conflict moment and I'm going to pull it inside and it's going to turn my globe red. It represents red. That is its color. It changes my entire environment, right? But here's the reality about this red ball or whatever it is that I'm holding on to. It doesn't want to be in the globe. It actually wants to continue with the cyclone around me. It wants to be there. I'm pulling it and holding on to it. It's got a cable outside there saying, I want to go home. And I am sitting there with my feet dug in the dirt like I'm playing tug of war and field day in school, like losing my shit to hold on to this problem. Back to that victim scenario we talked about earlier. Takes a lot of fucking work, right? But you'll sit there and hold your kite as hard as you can. But the moment you let it go, what happens? That globe turns clear again, right? And you can grab and you can change colors and you can pick something different and you can choose after you've taken a while to understand that those are all things that are choices. And you start to realize that anger is a choice. Pain is a choice. I'm not talking about physical pain. If I walk up and hit your pinky toe with a hammer, you're going to scream, right? Yeah. But if I lock you in the trunk of my car and I come back a half hour later and let you out, you're going to go write a book, but you're not in the trunk anymore. Right? That's a mental illness. Yeah. My time in the trunk, right? Yeah. Here's a clue. Put a dog in there, come back a half hour later and open it. How's the dog act when you open it? Fucking happy. Does not care. I'm not in the trunk anymore. Dude in the trunk comes out raging mad, traumatized, can't go near Lincoln's anymore. My time in the trunk in a book, all this shit. Animals are clues. Yeah. Well, they don't give a shit about what happened except for to duck, right? Nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to avoid that if I have to because it causes pain. But after that, it doesn't ride in my wagon. My wagon is empty. I would argue dogs don't even have a wagon, right? We have one. We will go into everything that we have or these different situations, and we'll have the opportunity to either A, go through it, or B, shovel the shit and throw it into a trailer behind us and continue walking, right? And we will do that and do that. We'll grab it, we'll throw it in there, and then we'll complain that our life stinks. Yeah. Only to realize that we were holding the rope, towing the trailer. Complaining to our friends, oh man, this is fucking shitty life. And you're like, but dude, you brought a wheelbarrow of shit with you. Like, let it go. Leave that somewhere else. Use it to fertilize your fucking garden, right? Oh, you like how I turn that back around? That's my fucking host.
That was good. That was good.
So you've got to use your awareness. And what I want to bring up here is that you turn to Tantra, somatic healing, and likely meditation, which is at the root of all of that. And I'd love to take the time to discuss that because I know it's very important to you. It's important to me and a lot of our listeners is that you cannot see the forest through the trees, right? So you need that opportunity to create clarity in what is the now in order to even see what's around us. And I feel like that's rooted in these practices that I just mentioned, and it's something that you help people with. So why don't we go ahead and discuss that?
Awesome.
Host,
perfect.
I just lost host points. Why don't we just discuss that?
No, this is great. Okay. So let's see. Where do I want to start, or what do I want to start with? Because there's so many tools that I've relied on and used and teach.
Tell us your tools in order.
Like of how I learned them or how I use them now?
No, how you came across them. Because there's individual perspectives that you're approaching this from, or spiritual practices or practices of some kind. So everybody has a unique journey to healing their self, right? So this is your opportunity to tell people how you stumbled into these different practices, how this was a catalyst for this, you know, how this told me to go back to square one and re-examine a part that I thought I understood, right? That's the cool thing about this. So please tell us all about it.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, from the very beginning, grief really became a huge open door for spirituality. So growing up for me, my dad, I think still to this day probably would call himself an atheist, like very just like, yeah, you die and then that's it. And like, that's his perspective on things. And so I was like a 16-year-old. I was a 16-year-old, like super asshole, like, oh, you believe in God? You're stupid. Like, that's how I would talk to people as a teenager, like just very abrasive about it. And then when in 2016, so when I was 2016, I lost my grandpa. And that was the very first ever like important, massive personal loss that I had experienced.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It was very hard. But up until that point, I had literally never cried to another person without being blacked out drunk, and usually only exclusively to a boyfriend at that time. And so like emotional processing was just like not an option. So I was just like in the depths of despair, drinking like crazy. Like it was just numbing out, not knowing what to do.
Numbing.
Yes. 3 years later, I had another loss that is like what I consider my spiritual awakening. And that in itself would have been enough, I think. But on top of the grief that had already been sitting there festering for 3 years and not been processed at all from the first loss, just was too much to handle. It just kind of like shattered my life is how it felt. And I've said this before, it shattered things in such a way, like tempered glass, like it had to look different by putting it back together. It wasn't like, oh, I dropped in a couple big pieces of glass. It was like fucking millions. And then you put it back together and it looks totally different. So,
bro, but that's stained glass. There's nothing more beautiful than an intricate piece of stained glass. Looking at a picture that's been put back together with the respective colors that create that area. Beautiful. There's a reason that resonates with us.
Yeah, I agree completely. I love that. I was like daydreaming about a stained glass roof yesterday in a future home or something.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yes. So I was picking out what you were putting down 24 hours ahead.
We're there.
So that had me just really ready to start looking for literally anything. I was so broken that I felt open to anything. There was no anything that I would say, oh, that's not good enough or that's a bad idea. Like I was just available. So all within the first year of that. And that came with me also being able to see the reality of how disempowered I was living my life. So that was everything at once. It was like I could see the veil was gone. I could see myself. I could see my life, and it was fucking horrifying. I did not want to see it. And so I started working with a psychic, started working with a medium. I started having Akashic Records readings. I did like a shamanic inner child retrieval, soul retrieval journey thing for a couple months. I did an inner child like reparenting program. for 90 days. I did a couple of in-person retreats. I did a retreat called Spiritual Sexual Shamanic Experience. Like I did literally everything you could think of. Reading books. I did CBT therapy, like all of
Good.
it. All of it in the first
Good.
year. It was just like a fire hose approach is how I did it. And
but
it was,
you went to the buffet, right?
Yes.
And you found out you like shrimp,
yes,
right?
exactly.
But
Yep.
you went through and checked it all out. That's the way you approach mindfulness and spiritual journeys. Open your mouth to the fire hose, let it blow your head back like a Pez dispenser, and enjoy the candy. I'm back. That was a great analogy.
So that's what I did. Within that first year, it was just very hardcore approach to all of it. I did 75 hard. Like I did literally everything you could think of, like physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and sexual all at once. And then about a year in, I found the Tantra school that I was going to become a part of. And long story short, I was with this school for about almost 3 years. They're fucking cults. It was a whole thing. Yeah. So that was a big initiation in itself. And I'm thinking of your original question, because you said like the order of how things unfolded for me. So one of the biggest lessons that I've realized through every single one of those experiences, and more as time goes on, is the illusion of separation. Just being able to see it and feel it and know it so much more intimately and like with lucidity regularly. Not just like a snapshot moment on a retreat once a year, but like a lot of the time I'm able to tap into that knowingness, that all of this separation, like I have this crystal in my hand, my hair is my hair and it's not your hair. And like those separations, that's part of the functional world we live in, because we have this 3D perception going on. But on the base level of everything that exists, everything is moving, everything is vibrational, everything is energetic. Like this idea of separation doesn't exist in that realm. And so in the highest levels. So when I would really go down hard with like inner child work or something, and something else would pop up and it would catch my attention. And part of me would gaslight myself a little bit and think, well, no, I've already done this, so I don't need to do that. Or like, that's going to take me away from this. And so then I would, battle with myself mentally and okay, I'm going to do this program. I'm going to learn this kind of therapy. I'm going to do this thing. And over time, what I could see in hindsight is that even things that seem to be competitive, like opposite approaches, all have a piece of the answer for you. Every single thing has a piece of the answer for you. All of it is the answer for you. And like, it's this big, time isn't real, we're all one sort of concept that's really hard to wrap your head around sometimes. But that is the take home message that I've experienced time and time again, no matter what I try to do, is that it has an impact, it has a purpose. And whether it's a mindset approach or a physical approach or a sexual approach or spiritual or whatever, that is important. Like our multidimensionality is so vast that it's easy to forget about. It's so easy to forget about. But
we've
remembering that
things
is
that
part
didn't
of the
need
healing.
to be in the categories they're in. Sorry. We've cataloged things that do not belong in the categories they're in. We've vastly diminished what are each individually beautiful in their own right. I think that we've constantly filed different things in feelings or zones that they don't belong. I think that our ability to process them in the now, like you're discussing, is the key to not carrying it with us and addressing it, right? I use a rope analogy. Everything you go through, you tie a knot in the rope if you don't want to go through it. What happens to a piece of rope over time? Turns into a knotted mess. If you keep tying knots in it, becomes useless. No good to yourself, no good to others. You have to sit down and do what? Untie your rope, right? And you have to do it one at a time. And that's the process of going through and choosing to begin your introspection and your journey, right? And it's funny how these analogies keep lining up. But my other analogy is you have to hit your knees to plant a tree and grow into a new life, right?
Uh-huh.
And that is being on your knees. And what they don't mention is that you can be there looking for a contact lens for fucking 4 or 5 years. You got all the intentions in the world of growing your tree, but you
Yeah.
look like Velma and fucking Scooby-Doo looking for your glasses, right?
Yeah.
You're doing good shit. You're trying to get there. You've got good intentions. That's why if you want to go out there and hang out with Tony Robbins and change your life and do all these other things, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. And here is why.
Yeah.
I believe that's the first taste of the ability to introspect. You've got to put your toe in it. Even if it's not good, even if it isn't, it shows you what you're not, right? And at least you're taking the chance on yourself at that point. Just know that if somebody's trying to sell you something that is supposed to impact your life in a positive way, there's going to be baggage. There's intent behind certain things that they're going to put out there, and you have to use your discernment. What we don't talk about is, we go back to the now again, those choices are loaded, right? Choices are loaded with what? Future anticipation or fear of repeating some stupid shit or what somebody else told me could happen, right? That's what it is. And we're not in that moment. Those choices remain loaded, but in reality, we know when we're doing something wrong. We know, and when I say wrong, I don't mean like breaking a law. I mean like
misaligned.
This dude's twisting a mustache, right?
Yeah.
I used to not understand, right? Hypervigilance is a thing. So another thing comes out of traumatic childhoods, right? It can be, it's got like different names and whispers of what it could be. It's kind of funny to me. I like to sit back and eat popcorn on this one because it's like, is it ADHD? Am I an empath? Am I hypervigilant? All these things, because they're all the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And they all just give you a label to what?
To know that you are hyper aware of all the shit around you that you need to protect yourself from, right? Children get it issued earlier if they go through a certain set of events. So what does it do? You navigate life and you look at everything around you. You know who's lying. You know who is selling. Ask yourself, are they selling me something? Right? There's a huge difference. I don't need you to tell me what'll work for me. I need you to live your life in a manner that I can see works.
Yeah.
That's all I need. Be a lighthouse. Stand up on your own, do your job, and other people will what? Get guidance from that. I don't need you to come out here and paint a line in front of me like it's a fucking road, because all you're doing is putting me into a wall. I know you're doing it, right? Because I need to come back to you to get more of it. Right? You're not going to paint me off into the fucking distance. You're going to paint me into the wall like Wile E. Coyote. Right? So I can come back and be like, I'm at another wall. But there and again, what do we know walls are? Silk. It's an illusion. That wall is not anything but your own self-limitations. And the root of all this, in my mind, comes back to authenticity. The moment that you allow your flower to grow as it originally was intended to be, not a tulip, not a rose, whatever you're not, you don't grow into that. The moment that you sit down and let yourself grow into what you are originally intended to be, no layers, no restrictions, no limitations. Don't tell me I can't play piano because you fucked it up before I got there. Thanks. Because I believe in my mind, I'm a savant, and you took away my opportunity to express it on that instrument by giving me a limitation, right? Be authentic, be yourself, right? And other things will come to you. You'll realize that you're actually part of a, what do they call that thing? Taupe, like when you have like a whole garden of bushes and flowers and, you know, where they do all the work on it, you find out that you're pink, right? You're the pink in that entire thing, right? But without you, right, you're not completing the entire look, right? You're taking away from the beauty of the entire garden. By pretending to be a plant you're not, a flower you're not only are you taking away from the overall brilliance of how it looks, you're actually causing pain for the ones that are supposed to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a disservice to your soul, to your life, to the world around you to be anyone other than who you are. And that
all
means
day long.
healing. That means not trying to be someone else consciously, but also that means healing your shit. Because until you do, that's not who you are. That's what you learn. That's how you learn to cope. That's a bunch of, an amalgamation of learned things that were never you to begin with. So you have to unlearn them, shed them, be able to say, okay, that part is really me. And this is something that saved my life once upon a time, but doesn't help me now. And you can get rid of those things. And I see that as like a duty of every single human on the planet.
Absolutely. You owe it to your fellow human.
Yeah.
You are made one way. To be anything different is a slap in the face of whomever or whatever made you. Right?
Yes.
Don't disrespect the people around you by taking away the beauty that is you. Yes. Right? Because like myself, I've gone through life and been different people, different characters. The show's logo is masks because I firmly believe that we wear masks throughout life for every type of interaction. Pick them up, carry them, throw them in your backpack. You got them for life until you realize, again, it was something you were holding on to yourself. You didn't need any of those characters. You were beautiful without any of them. Go out there with your scarred mask because everybody else has them. Taking off your mask licenses other people to take off theirs. Right? We're in this big stalemate where everybody has to hide behind a mask that they don't want to wear. Like there was nothing more beautiful than the pandemic and the women in this country that didn't wear makeup anymore. It couldn't have been any more beautiful to see family, friends, all these women naturally beautiful. And all it did was remind me what I didn't need to see. If you're doing it, do it. That's your thing. If you love it, if you're finding something from it, it's creative, allows you to express yourself. So long as it is not filling a void, rock on with your bad self. But man, women were beautiful that way. It was so much better because you can't know somebody if they're hiding behind a mask on day one.
Yep.
Right?
That's literally the reason that I quit dyeing my hair 2 or 3 years ago. I used to bleach the shit out of it, like from the roots, bleached platinum for 15 years or so. I didn't even know that this was my hair color. And then that's a horrible process, like
that.
2 inches, 4 inches of roots. Like it's not a good look for a long time. But that was my commitment. I'm like, literally, how do you meet a life partner? How do you meet a mate under false pretenses and have it be really aligned? Like it couldn't possibly be. Like they're not meeting they're not meeting you. They're meeting something else. And that is a bad start, in my opinion. So I wanted to say something about tying it into what you had said about the snow globe analogy and tying it into Tantra, because the Tantra that I practice specifically is a lineage-based Tantra, which is important distinction. If you're looking into Tantra, there's a difference between classical Tantra that has roots you can follow all the way back to the beginning, or Neo-Tantra, which is basically anyone who thinks they have an opinion on sex or healing or meditation who wants to put a book on Amazon. Okay, so be discerning. That's why I'm biased. But anyways, the lineage.
My Rabbit and Me.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the book that you might actually, blah, blah, blah. Buy that book. Buy the My Rabbit and Me because that person knows themselves.
Right. Written by Tantrika Alexis or whatever. And it's like, what's that? Who qualified you? So anyways, the lineage of
I love this.
Tantra that I study is a Tibetan Buddhist lineage, and it can be traced back 1,200 years to the actual origin of this lineage, but the roots of it can be traced all the way back like 15,000 plus years ago.
Probably the Vedas.
Where animism was like the only thing practiced really in that whole Himalayan region, which is basically just seeing spirit and life in every single thing, being at one with nature and the elements and spirit. So it uses some things that are very unfamiliar to the Western world, like the chakra system. In the lineage I teach is 5 chakras, and each one is associated with an element. So like the root and the sacral in this tradition is the fire element. So it's just, a little bit different terminologies, but it's all the same idea that we're working with the energy body. We're working with, the most subtle parts of ourselves to help us live our true nature in this human world. So one of the root poisons, there are 5 root poisons. That's the word, or just what they're called in this lineage, the Tibetan Buddhist lineage. 5 root poisons of emotions that lead to all human emotional suffering is the belief. One of them is attachment. And attachment, I see it as, there's 2 sides to the coin. Attachment or aversion are both the desire to control something that is not within our control. And so we can attach by clinging on to something, not wanting to let it go, or we can be averse to something and be trying to control it by not being willing to face it, keeping it at arm's distance. And that's the only way we'll have it. That's controlling as well. And so I like to use the example of a magnet. So what you were saying about the snow globe, like you're describing attachment that creates suffering for all of us, holding on to something that's no longer good for us.
Correct.
And not being willing to let it go. That is the pain causing thing. So when that root poison is cleared out, what we're left with is magnetism, which is our true nature. Like literally electromagnetic beings with our heart field being like the biggest thing. We are here to be magnetized to what's right.
Without my intervention, my breath returns without my intervention. That is the one and only time I was able to put the word faith and understanding at the same time together. I had no clue what anybody else meant about faith. It really just was beyond my understanding. I was like, and I'm pretty sure 99% of the people that say that they know faith are not being truthful or don't understand what faith actually means. And I found that through meditation. And that was the moment that I allowed breath to return without my control in the state of meditation, because that takes time. We're so in control that the moment I tell you to breathe, you take over for something that was happening before you got there. Right?
Absolutely.
That's like thinking you're pushing a train while you're running beside it.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I'm doing it. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're controlling it, but it's not yours.
I love that so much.
Faith comes from that returned breath or that next heartbeat. And it is energy because we actually go out and pick up a device called a defibrillator, right? And put it on our chest and go, stand back. We're going to pump some electricity into this son of a bitch and he's going to pop back up, right? Kind of a clue. Energy. Right?
Yes.
We literally require a jump start.
We are electrical beings. Absolutely. Electrical beings.
With like
we are
some
mechanical
long-ass battery.
Yeah, we're mechanical with consciousness, which is complicated. So
it is. That's really existential. People start tuning out and they're like, what do they mean?
Yeah. But the thing that is our true state, that is not the root poison version of it, is magnetism. And so I like to use this example. It's very concrete for people to understand. You take a magnet, a real magnet that goes on the fridge. You know how it works. You know how magnetism works roughly enough to know that it goes on the fridge, right? So does that mean you couldn't put it on the cabinet? No, but it wouldn't be naturally able to do that. You would have to put glue on the back or tape it or put a nail in it or something to attach it, something to take it out of its true nature of behavior to be something else that you think it should be. You can do that. We can. We all have the ability and the permission to do that. And that's how most of us are living our lives 100% of the time, is by attaching ourselves to things, jobs, homes, cities, partnerships, whatever roles that we've taken on or been given, attaching ourselves with, feathers and glue and rope and all this stuff that binds us and separates us from our magnetism. It takes us away from our magnetism. And if we allow ourselves to shed those attachments, to just let it fucking go, or to be willing to face it if you're the one that avoids, because those are flip sides of the same coin. Attachment's like the yang version of control. Aversion is like the yin version, the more passive version, but you're still controlling. And so both of those things, if you allow yourself to start to let them go, you will become much more magnetic. You'll start having ex-boyfriends calling you. You'll start getting job offers on the other side of the country where you're really meant to be. Like, things will just rearrange themselves and you will naturally align with the right people, places, opportunities, things when you're in your authentic state. Yes. So Tantra is one of the things I use to help people strip those root poisons, purify the things that are on top of their true state so they can be authentic.
man, we're so beautiful and just slathered in shit. Like so much crap layered over what is the most beautiful being in existence, right? And we're doing it to ourselves. Even our sustenance, we have to do nonsense tasks to earn biosurvivability tickets in order to consume food. When was the last time you saw a lion put on a fucking visor and do accounting before he ate a gazelle? No, eat your fucking gazelle, right? Let's grow our own food, get back to the roots of things. I like to think about how nonsensical we are in order to understand who we really are at the same time. It allows me to see the juxtaposition of what it is to exist in two different worlds. And I love the impossible whopper. And that whoever the person was out there, I like to think that there's a man or a woman, their job was to make salad smell like beef, right? That was their whole, it smell and taste like beef. And their whole life, they were going home. They're like, honey, I'm so close. A little bit more liquid smoke. I know if I add some phenol number 9 or whatever the fuck it is, or, you know, it's sitting there, honey, if you don't come home before midnight, then I'm going to leave you. Where's dad? All this shit. The whole 9, picks up a cocaine habit. Who knows, right? Because this whole world about trying to make salad smell like beef. You could have ate it. Just eat the salad. What's all this work? What are we creating? Like, why is this world in existence where we're enhancing what already exists? Just to do it. Just to earn money to go back and eat it to begin with. You know what's funny? Is he probably took the money from that job and bought a salad. At some point.
Yeah. I think all this, like you said, it's like a production. It allows us to perpetuate our painful way of being without having to look at it. If we were stripped back to our natural life, like in every way, food, money, like operating systems, we wouldn't fit into it. Mostly, largely, because we internally as a collective have become so traumatized, we match the traumatized world, you know? And so if the world was just restored, we would go through a whole death process because we have to come back to our natural state.
I love that you said a death process. I have a theory. I'd love to hear your thoughts behind this. And I know we got to wrap up soon. We've been going for a while and I could talk to you forever. But I have a theory because you said that there's a death process. And I would agree. I don't know that this is true or anything like that, but I like to think that we manifest our futures and we allow ourselves to create things through authentic pursuits of our creativity, right? We write out our future through what we pursue now. We see it in science fiction and comedy. Comedy always comes true in reality, and science fiction does because they're the least impeded. We allow them to operate outside of the societal boxes, the norms, right? So I believe that when we rewrite stories or tales over time, we tend to be accurate as a whole. As a larger group, it tends to say that there's something larger than us. We're supposed to be good people. We're going to end up in some kind of different state, right? I like to call it a state because everybody thinks that we're going to a location, right? And I don't know that that's something that even would exist. If we were to look at it as a whole, our existence isn't dictated by where we stand. Our existence is based on our existence. Right? So I like to think that if we look back over history, telling the story of God or the greater creation and where we're going, if we lend credit to those comedy, science fiction, and the power of the human capability to write its story, I would like to think that we're all standing in a line writing the same thing, but with different perspectives. A pizza, if you will, with different toppings on each one, but all pointed at the same shit, right in the middle, right? And I believe that the death portion of this, I think there is an outcome where we come together as a species. We've been writing about it since the dawn of time. We just think that we're going to leave people in the mud behind us for being bad, right? Yeah. I don't know that that's the case either. But I do know that through meditation or somatic healing or Tantra or prayer or, divine intervention or, being a cardinal in, a monastery out in East Jabumble-Jabib, wherever. We can all agree, though, that something greater than us exists. We just don't know where it is. I argue that we're there and that the death is of the ego and that we're already in heaven. And we're just the only creature on this rock that doesn't realize it. And that through a collective shift in consciousness is going to reveal to us all the things that we're doing that are contradictory to our existence. And I believe at only that point, without food, animals will begin to integrate with us with ease. If you walk out into a field with 10 different breeds of animals, they all scatter from what? The human. They'll all stand together with no problem. They don't want no part of the human, right? Yeah. Unless the human comes out there and throws them ham, or some other shit, the animal's not going to come to them, right? But then never mind, that's a form of love. Dogs capitalized on our issues, right? They're the one creature that said, you know what? They're fucking nuts, but if I lay there and let them pet me, they'll give me food and comfort. They grew to have larger eyes.
Right.
They have proven that they have rounder eyes because it allows them to be more appealing to humans and in a way that they will want to give them food. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's another clue, but I'm going off on a tangent. But at the same time, I think that they are showing us that we're in heaven and we are willingly looking away from it. We're putting on some kind of lens where we won't pay attention to what is going on around us. Right.
Yes,
and if we can't see how beautiful it is.
I do agree.
How beautiful
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah. I do agree 100%. I'm looking at my phone because I have a hard cutoff in like 3 minutes, time-wise.
Tell us where we can find you.
Yes. So the best place to find me currently is Instagram for sure, at Hannah Spanke, HannahSpanke. And TikTok as well, less active. But Instagram is the best place for current updates, usually daily. And my website's being redone. And so that will be more available very soon. But that's where you can stay plugged in, follow once, and just stay plugged in and just
Dude, your social media is on fire. You speak truth and in a manner that people really could benefit from hearing.
Thank you.
I before we do wrap up, do you give your website real quick?
So
or your Instagram handle?
The Instagram is at Hannah Spanke. The website is hannahspanke.com, but it's not active right now. And so I don't think it'll go to anything.
Okay.
But that will be fixed soon or finished soon. And the link in the bio on Instagram, you can see whatever's available, different offerings.
Perfect.
Just to stay plugged in.
So before we go, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. There is strength in vulnerability. And I think you coming forward is giving other people license to find their strength, right? Because vulnerability is a veil, or it's just something that we think is going to cause us pain, that we're going to be raw, when in reality, it's an illusion, right? Yeah. It's kind of like being authentic. You feel like you're standing on a cliff with a blindfold and a cigarette in your mouth, when really you were on a curb. When you actually stepped off, it was just a big joke, and it's so easy to be yourself. And I think that you are a prime example of what it is to take that leap and realize that you were already perfect before you came into it. And I think that you're showing people your divinity, if you will, through your pursuit of helping others, because there's really nothing better than giving back in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying that you got to be Mr. Philanthropy or Mrs. Philanthropy or whatever, but just know that you're making ripples in your own pond, right? You might want to think about throwing out things for good and stop peeing in it, because you're going to have to live in it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like soup. Don't put shit in your soup that you don't want to eat for the rest of your life, right? If that's your only pot. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to have you back on. I think there's more stuff that we can discuss at some point.
Definitely.
And I'll link up with you after this at another point, just to kind of discuss how the end process goes and how we're going to release your show. So remember, everybody, be cool and keep learning.